Hello everyone, welcome back to Python tutorials by Code Warriors. So in the previous video we have talked about the basics of object oriented programming. What is object oriented programming. Then we talked about the classes, what are classes. Then we talked about the instance of class, that is an object. Then we talked about the two things that object contains, attributes and its behavior. Now attributes means data, so data has to be in some kind of variable. The behavior is in methods. Then we talked about what are methods. Methods are just like functions, but with a different name inside object-oriented programming. So now today we are going to go in a little bit in detail about these attributes, these variables, and the methods. So let's get into a spider and see what are these. No, okay. So to start with, let's create a class and make it a student. I will just give a practical about it, how it works all. Okay. And if there is a class, then let's create an object of the class also. Let's say object obj1 simple equals to student. Now let's create one more object obj2.student. There are two objects inside that class, right? No issues. Okay. Now we have created a class. Now let's create a behavior. We have created class, we have created an object. Now we need behavior. Okay, so we created a func method, and let's say method is meth, and let's pass in some attributes, self comma, let's say name comma age. Okay, these three attributes we have passed inside of it. Right now let's leave it as it is. Now what we did here, see, we've called it a create a class student. We have created an object for that. There's one object obj1 and there is another object obj2. That's student. Okay, we have created two. Okay, we've created two objects over here. Now then we have defined one method with a name, age and name. Now to call this method, how we have to call this method? Just like we use any method in any kind of an object. How we do it? We write obj_1 dot math, and it shows here, you see, math, and pass in the parameters like, let's say, two names. Now first math comma 20. Okay, now let's pass it for the another also, math, and let's give it some name like I Harsh comma 30. Okay, we have created two uh, objects over here. Then we are calling these methods, right? We are calling this function, whatever this function does with these objects. How this line it means is, there's obj1, what how math is defining obj1. Okay, like in data types, in the list is also object, let's say, and list we use list dot index, list dot sort. Now when we do list dot sort, what it does, it sort the list. Okay, same way when we are doing math dot obj1 dot math, that means whatever is inside of the math, whatever that math function does, it is gonna do it on obj1, and same it is gonna do it in obj2 over here. Okay, so let's run it, let's see what happens. Although nothing is going to happen because we are defining nothing inside of the method, we have passed it. But you notice here, it is accepting three parameters over here, and we are passing only two parameters, and still it is not giving us the error. Why it is this? What is this self over here? Okay, this is a big question, right? What is this self? So I want to tell you something. Whenever we passing these two variables, okay, now Mav is also a name, Harsh is also a name. Okay, it is going inside of this variable. Now this don't know in which object this name is coming for. Is it coming for obj1 or is it coming for obj2? So to define it, to tell it that this is for obj1, we pass in the self the object. Now name consists, name gets this string over here, age gets this 20, and self gets the name of the object which it is working in for, which it is defining. Here, this is the self. It get the obj1 dot this obj1 dot math. In this obj1 is passed to the self. This is the purpose of the self. And when we define these variables, when we store the values of these variable, we use the simple same concept, self dot name, or you can say name underscore 1 plus name. Now that's how we store values. Now if we want to print it over here outside of this function, let's say print obj underscore 1 dot, you see here it gives us name 1. Oh yeah. And let's print it. Let's run it the whole program, and it printed us obj1 dot name. But if we are not using it, let's comment it and now see what happens. Student object has no attribute name 1. Okay, let's remove name 1. Let's give it only name. Let's see now what happens. Student object has no attribute name, because right now it doesn't know name is for which object. Okay, if you print inside of it over here, print name, and then if we run it up to here, let's see, it is going to print for the map and for the hash, because it works like a function. It is following all the properties of a function, and you pass in the parameter, it is going to print that parameter. But if you want to use that parameter in whole program, how are you going to use it? Because for this parameter is right now defined inside only of this function only, this method only. But if you want to use it outside the method, how are you going to use it? You need to tell it that this variable belongs to which object you are using. So what we do is, let's move it, we call in the object inside of the method, we tell it this object we are right now calling, and then we name it. We provide it a variable like self.name. Now it is not necessary to use self over here. You can use anything. You can say other, and right here other. Okay, and still it is going to work just fine. Okay, not this time. Yeah, still it's gonna work just fine. Nav, it needs anything, but self is like, you know, some predefined keyword. That's why it was highlighted. You can use anything to call. The first, it's just remember the first attribute that you are using has to be for the object, not for any variable from here, for not for any parameter. It has to be the parameter attribute for the object. Now this is the story of our self. This is how we use. This is the reason why we use self inside of it. And I have skipped that part in the previous video. I haven't told you because I want to tell you when I'm going to explain you it in deep. Okay, now there is one very important thing inside of a class. One not important, maybe you can say popular thing. There's this function. This is method init with 2 underscores both sides. This is a special method. Okay, it also contains same thing, self. I mean, it also contains all kinds of parameters. Let's write it right now fast. So this is a special method, and you don't need to call this method. Like we are calling here obj1.math, obj2.math, but we don't call this method. And let's see. See, we are not calling this method. This method is working just fine by itself. And just to test it more correctly, put a print statement over here, and let's say I'm working fine. Control A F9, and you see it printed twice. I'm working fine, I'm working fine. We have created 2 objects, and for each object it printed I'm working fine. But how it is happening? We are not calling it. We are not saying obj1 dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore and then passing some values. We are not doing anything, but it is still printing it. So this is the special method which is called while creating an object. Let's run only this much, okay, up to the object part only. Let's skip the rest of the thing, and you see it is it's called, and it printed out the value, whatever is inside of it. Now this function is called whenever we calls an object. Now the the importance of to use this feature is, now sometimes what happens when you create an object, you want to give it some specific values inside of it. You want to provide some specific data that has to be run inside of that object only, and that has to be run in the whole class. And you don't want to define it again and again inside of the functions. Every time you call a function, you don't want to do it again and again. There's some standard values you want to make it run inside of a whole program for that one particular object. So in that case, like let's say we are creating an object for the dog breeds. Okay, so now I want to give a standard value. Let's say I want to talk about Labrador. So let's say I want to pass lab over here. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give it a one value, breed over here. Okay, so now what happens, and now if we are giving it a breed, we have to provide in some kind of variable over here. So breed underscore 1. We can use breed also, we can use breed underscore 1 also, whatever variable you want to give it, just give it and breed. Okay, now we have, oh, let's run it, let's see what happens. Okay, one thing is init missing one required. Okay, wait a minute, init missing one required positional argument breed. Yeah, okay, so we haven't provided for the second object. Let's give it some, you know, that's a German Shepherd. Well, that's not German only. Okay, so now run it. Now you see it worked fine for the both functions, for the both objects, sorry, and self.breed. Now for every time, now if you want to use this breed value, now this is the breed value we have given it. Okay, this is the breed we are gonna give it. Then we provided the name. Now I have a dog, there is a dog Labrador. Now I want to give it a name and an age. So what I gave it a name Mav, I gave it a name Harsh, I gave it age 20. All the dogs don't live up to 20, so let's reduce it to 3, and again let's reduce it to 4. Okay, I provided it the age of Mav 3 and Harsh 4. So what we did, we classified whole thing. We said when I'm talking about Labra, now these are the things has to be done, and it has to be done inside of the Labra breed. Okay, so if you don't want to tell it every time again and again, like here also again you want to pass a breed, and then again we are talking about some method, some kind of a behavior of that dog, then again we pass what breed it is. If you don't want to do this again and again, what you do it, you call it an object and you tell that object, this object is called Labra, this object has these kinds of variables and it is going to work, and these variables are the global variables, or you can say standard variables inside of that whole class. Same thing for the second object we do. And that's why this init is used. Like when you called an object, you gave it some values, that these are the standard values of this object. Work with these values. Now these values will be constant for this whole function, for this whole class, so until for this whole object running inside of that class. Okay, this is the use of this init over here. And again you can use anything other than the self. Self is just self is accepting only the object. You can use anything. Okay, so now we can, okay, let's create another function method, sorry, method 2, and the like in the functions, what we in functions we used to call functions inside of a function. We can create multiple functions, and we can call each of the functions inside of other functions, and also in itself. Same thing applies over here. We created this method over here, and let's call it the previous method. Now how to call a previous method? Simple, self dot math, and we pass it the values. What are the values? Name and age we want to pass. We give it value like Yash, comma 10. Okay, we pass these values. Now what happens is, if we run this whole program, let's see what happens. What are the outputs? Okay, we aren't printing anything right now. We have put a pass over here, we aren't printing it. So let's print it over here, print, and what printer other name. You can print also, if you are using inside of a function, you can also print just name only. It will work just fine. And if you are outside the function, you have to use other dot name. You have to use the object also. But if you right now you're inside the function, you can use name. But it is a good practice to use other dot name. You use the object so that you don't forget anytime. You don't get confused anytime. It will, try to create just one kind of a pattern. You work in that pattern only. It makes your programming easy, other than applying so many different things and then you get confusing yourself. So it's a good practice like this. Then print other dot h. Okay, now let's run it. Okay, some kind of error. Student object has no attribute name. Okay, we were giving it underscore name1, and we haven't created for h other dot a underscore 1 plus h. Okay, control A, F9. Okay, again some kind of an error. There is other underscore 1. We have been using other underscore 1 dot h. Okay, lot of typos. Now you see, finally we got the output. Okay, it said I'm working fine, I'm working fine for the 2 times when we create an object. We call this init function immediately while creating an object and said I'm working fine. Okay, then next what happens, it called obj1.math and it says print map and 3. It passed 2 values, map and 3, and it printed map and 3 over here. Then it obj2.math was created and it said Harsh and 4 it's created, and then it created out of map, but we haven't created this function up yet. Okay, let's okay, not here. Obj underscore 1 dot math 2. We aren't passing anything. Obj 1 dot math 2. Again, we are not passing anything. Now let's see. Okay, so now you see. Okay, wait. Okay, so what happened? Again, I'm working fine, same thing. Math passed, 3 passed, Harsh passed, 4 passed. Okay, we printed those values. Then what happened? We called obj1.math2 function. This function, it goes to this function, there are no values to be passed, and then the thing has to be run inside. What it is defining? It is defining the math function back, math method back. So what it took it back to a math method and it passed 2 values, Yash and 10. Yash and 10 went to this function. Now name is Yash, age is 10. It's simple like a function, the way we worked in function. Same concept here, and it gives us these values. Now I want to tell you one more thing. Now, like right now we've defined like self.read is we have variables like this. We can also inside of the class we can also keep variable like this also. X.10. We can create a list. Let's say list underscore 1 equals to, and we can say 1, 2, 3. Okay, we can create variables like this also, and we can print them inside in simple format like print x, print list underscore 1. Okay, same, it works just fine. So this is all about methods and attributes. And when we'll talk about inheritance inside of class, encapsulation, then we'll see it in more practical way, more practical approach with some examples, some real based examples, and we will understand it more clearly. Okay, so let's keep it up to here only. Practice these things, see more about it, how you can work with us init function, how you can give some standard values inside of this class, and work with these methods and attributes, and see you in the next video.